Wizards of the Coast has just released the newest wave of Baldur's Gate spoilers, and I have to say, it's a really mixed bag. We're gonna see the best that Baldur's Gate has to offer, and the worst that Baldur's Gate has to offer.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends! I hope the day finds you well, because we have gathered for a glorious installment of Baldur's Gate spoilers. This one is showcasing the heights of Baldur's Gate and the depths, where we've got the greatest and the worst. In fact, I've reflected that in my garment. Some of you who are really clever will notice one is up and one is down. So we're going all the way up to the heights of goodness and all the way down to Frown Town. Let's dive in. Here's how it works, my friends. We're starting out with the most powerful card. We'll end off with the absolute worst card and wander around to different levels in between. So starting out, we're going to be looking at Font of Magic, an absolutely busted blue enchantment. Like blue needed more awesome toys, but hey, here we are. Font of Magic is 1 blue and 3, and it says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. I think it's amusing that they specifically felt the need to add the words "this game" at the end. Do you know anybody who would play this enchantment and be like, just so you know, I've actually cast my commander from the command zone over 700 times in my life, so I get a 700 mana reduction on all my spells. It's just a silly little bit of extra wording, which is funny to me when Wizards seems obsessed with trying to find ways to cut down on the amount of words on cards, right? But anyways, this is a super powerful effect. If you can iterate your commander out many times, you're going to get massive reductions. There are already people out there going, okay, I'm going to combine this with the new Krark and Sakashima. All of a sudden now, every time I cast an instant or sorcery, I can coin flip and put it right back in my hand if things go my way. So I can just cast massive amounts of spells over and over, on top of the fact that Krark is a nice cheap commander to get you multiple casts to get you going, right? Now obviously there's a ton of different options you can do with this, but there's a lot of power packed into this card. This one for me is the most jaw-dropping of the spoilers that we've seen, and it's also awesome from a flavor perspective. It almost feels the same way as a Planeswalker Spark Igniting. It says, Warness had always felt a glimmer of potential within herself, flickering just out of reach. That night, as the cultist attacked, it became a torrent of power that was hers to command. I love that idea. Somebody who has this like latent power deep within them, but they need something, some really epic level event to draw it out of them. Just a yearning isn't enough. You need that I must survive sort of frenetic flood of energy and endorphins to hit your body, and then all of a sudden, boom, you can access this magic. And the artwork is dope too, right? You have her with her hand extended, pointing a finger forwards as lightning and power are crackling out of it. Her eyes are glowing. This is somebody who's just tapped into this power, may not fully understand how to control it with a level of subtlety, but they do know how to do it with a level of force. I picture this as like bringing up the power in your hand, Dragon Ball style, point and click action, boom, off it goes. Awesome card. Absolutely fantastic. Next thing we're going to talk about is another crazy mythic. Now this one for some people is the best and some people is the worst. This is Legion Loyalty, a massively expensive white enchantment. It costs 2 white and 6, so you have to pay 8 mana to cast this thing. But it gives all of your creatures Myriad, and Myriad is an insane ability, in Commander specifically, that says, whenever a creature with Myriad attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player, or a planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. Now I want to say one thing I really like about Myriad is the fact that they put in the word may. Giving you the option to not create the tokens makes this more powerful, because there are certain cards that will punish you if they come into play without being cast. Phage the Untouchable is a prime example of that. If you made copies of Phage, you'd actually straight up lose the game, right? So Having the ability to go, I'm only copying the guys I want, makes this a no downside card. That being said, it does cost 8 mana to get it on the board, so you're either going to have a crazy amount of resources or a way to cheat it out. And on its own, this enchantment does absolutely nothing, right? You do have to have creatures swinging in. Now, when it comes to commander, creatures are plentiful, right? So it's not like you're going to be sitting in a situation where you're going to be running this and not be able to back it up with a bunch of creatures. But it's just the casting cost, the fact that it doesn't do anything right out of the gates or anything like that. This feels to me like the opposite of the blue mythic we just looked at. That blue mythic is probably going to be a super expensive, desirable card over time. And this is going to be a niche, like, bulk mythic. I guess I could be wrong about that because I haven't built a ton of commander decks, but the casting cost, everything about this card says to me that this is a low tier, like terrible, more terrible end mythic than better. But there are people kind of arguing about it, and since it has that disparity where people think it's awesome and terrible, it makes it into our best and worst video, right? And the artwork shows straight up a legion of individuals. I mean, for me, the myriad thing, it's supposed to feel to me like there's copies of the creatures being made, but this doesn't feel like copies. This feels like, what is it? Is there 5, 6? See, I like it better when myriad cards show 3 extra people in it, because then it's like you've got the main one and the 3 copies that would be sent off to hit the other players. This artwork really speaks to me of something Wizards of the Coast just had kicking around and made a card to use the artwork, right? So this is on the low end of the scale for me. Moving on. We have a really cool concept. They've brought back the dragon orbs. So this is both best and worst. It's the best because it's dragon orbs, and it's the worst because these are awesome dragon aligned cards that are jank bag commons, okay? So you have the Lapis Orb of Dragonkind, which is 1 blue and 2 for an artifact that says tap to add a blue. When you spend this mana to cast a dragon creature spell, scry 2. So this kind of concept is fun, right? You've got artifacts that will accelerate your dragons coming out. The orbs of Dragonkind allow you to summon and control dragons in the world of D&D. And if you didn't realize it in the artwork, behind the orb, that's actually a giant dragon's eye staring at it entranced, which is really cool. And the idea that when you use this to bring in a dragon, it gives you additional magic power, the whole concept of scrying, is also really awesome. The sad thing about this is, for dragon lovers, these aren't going to see play outside of very limited formats. Maybe there'll be a few commander players who really tuck these in, but ultimately these awesome concepts are kind of doomed to stagnate in bulk boxes, which, considering the art and concept of these, is really a travesty. And we have 3 different variations. So the next one we're looking at is the Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, and this is the red one. So it's a red and 2, and this one taps for a red mana, and if you spend that mana on a dragon, it gains haste until end of turn. Now this is a more appealing Orb of Dragonkind. The Scry one doesn't really feel like it fits that well into a dragon concept. This one, theoretically, I could actually see dragon users actually slapping into their deck, because the haste and the mana might be enough. Sure, it's not like high level power like a Sol Ring or anything like that, but still, this one is the one that feels like it might make its way into somebody's deck. And I like that this one has a dragon's wing protectively encircling it, and inside it you can see like a full-on dragon. The last one felt like more misty and frosty. It wasn't as easy to pick out the dragon. The flavor text says, the essence of a red dragon burns within, always ready to rise with wrath. And that is a great way to explain the flavor of the Orb of Dragonkind, specifically the idea of it giving haste. It's the rage, the wrath of a red dragon. And red dragons are just awful, wrathful beasts in D&D too, because the different dragons have alignments based on their colors. Then we've got the Jade Orb of Dragonkind. So this is the green one. 1 green and 2, taps to add a green. When you spend this mana to cast a dragon creature, it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it and gains hexproof until your next turn. So this one's interesting to me. The idea of giving hexproof to a dragon feels great, right? I just summoned up my dragon, you can't hit him right now, and he has a +1/+1 counter. And if you can do some silliness, like imagine you had out the red dragon orb and the green dragon orb. Now you've got a hasted +1/+1 counter hexproof dragon the turn you drop it. And that is beef that cannot be ignored, right? In the artwork itself, you can see that it looks like there's 3 dragons that are like biting into a metallic ring. And behind it, you can see what appears to be like, I assume it's a dragon laying down, like curled around this, like he's sleeping, and it's his treasure, right? Because behind it, you can see like a ridge of scales moving up as his back gets bigger over the large torso of the dragon. And then around the front, you can see the aspect of the shadowed tail curling around it. Dragon orbs were always fascinating to me in Dungeons & Dragons, specifically the ones from Dragonlance and Kryn, right? Oh, that was awesome stuff. Moving on to the next card, we've got pure awesomeness in the form of Displacer Kitten. 1 blue and 3 for a 2/2 baby Displacer Beast. It's a cat beast. It has avoidance. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. The idea behind Displacer Beasts is one of the coolest things in Dungeons and Dragons. There are these beasts that they're like almost like Schrodinger's cat. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like it's almost like they're in multiple places at the same time. And so it's really hard to pinpoint their exact location. It's really hard to target them with weaponry. They have a bonus on their armor class and things like that. Do they still use armor classes in D&D? I'm 2nd edition. Old Thaco, 2-hit armor classes 0 days. But either way, the Displacer Beasts are awesome beasts. I'm getting so excited here. The Displacer Beasts are an awesome creature from D&D. I love that you can like take their hides and make cloaks of displacement and use like their like blood and stuff for blink magics. I just love all of that. And the fact of the matter is the ability of this kitten ties in quite well to that concept, right? Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can exile a non-land permanent you control. So basically, you can just flicker one of your permanents and slap it right back into play. This thing would be insane if it would let you hit lands too, because then it'd just be like, oh, so I can just reduce the cost of all my spells with this thing too, right? Like, man, the fact that it slaps a flicker onto every spell, it's silly. Oh, are you going to destroy one of my permanents? I'm actually just going to play an instant that was going to let me draw cards, but oops, look at I just saved the card you were going to destroy. It feels so versatile, and I love the idea of a little Displacer Beast baby cat. That's so fun. The flavor text says, isn't she the cutest thing you've almost seen? I love it. And that's Doan, purveyor of exotic pets. The idea of going and buying a Displacer Beast pet, and it's like, isn't this the cutest thing you've almost seen? It ties together so well. This is so much awesome. I almost can't handle it. I love this card very, very much. Then we've got Ambition's Cost. This makes it on because the flavor concept behind the card is absolutely incredible, right? This is a reprint that we've seen a number of times. Your standard 1 black and 3 sorcery that says you draw 3 cards and you lose 3 life. The flavor text says, of course it can be yours. Anything is possible for the right price. Speaking of which, I just love it. Like, when you look at this artwork, there's no real darkness kind of implied to it at first, right? You're just like, oh, it's just a guy who's trying to sell a shield. Like, check out this magical shield. But you can see how entranced the other fellow looks as he reaches out for it. Almost like he's not in control of his mind. Like, oh, like he's seeing the face of divinity or something. And he's reaching out for it like, I must have this. And you have the drow who's there leaning forward with this, like, just this look on his face. He's got this smile, but the intensity in his eyes, those are the eyes of somebody who sees their next meal, right? Like, he's gonna feed on this dude's life energy. Is this a servant of Loth? Like, is the life energy already being drained out of him to a degree? He's just gonna agree to it no matter what it costs. Is he actually being aged right now in the artwork? Was he younger and his life force is being sucked out? There's just something about the way this is done. It's so different than the way that Ambition Cost normally is shown. I love it. This like power at any cost, but in an unwilling and tricky sort of way where you're making a deal, but you don't realize just how much of a Faustian bargain it is. That's awesome, right? That's so good. Now, speaking of good, let me show you Emerald Dragon. I love this card. I think this is really, really cool. Admittedly, I'm a big greenie boy, right? It's 2 green and 4 for a 4/4 flying trample dragon, which I love to start with because I love big flying dragons in green. You don't get them normally, and in green we're starved for flyers. But you also get the Adventure Time spell on this, which is Dissonant Wave, that says counter target activated or triggered ability from a non-creature source. This may feel very weird for green because it's an ability that green doesn't normally get, but green has been given counterspell style abilities since all the way back in like 1994 with Legends. They show up few and far between, but they do exist. There is precedent, and I love the fact that now there's this random green dragon that you can use its power to just shut down some random activated or triggered ability, but it ties into green, and because green is all about creatures, they're like, except you can't shut down creature abilities, because we love creatures. It feels so green and so right. The flavor text says, Emerald dragons hate prying eyes, and they have a host of ways to deter them. That's right, Emerald dragon. Don't you let them trolls talk smack to you outside your cave. You blast them with them emerald waves. He's got the breath weapon, or you can just pick up chunks of emerald and go, get out of here. Take these gems and hit the road, chump. I mean, this card isn't going to tear it up in standard or whatever, but I put it in here because we're talking best and worst, and this to me is the best. Now we're going to talk about the worst. The worst card in Baldur's Gate. Call to the Void. What a waste of an amazing name and artwork. 1 black and 4 for a sorcery that says each player secretly chooses a creature they control and a creature they don't control. Then those choices are revealed. Destroy each creature chosen this way. I hate this card, man. I hate cards like this. I think this is awful. I know there are people who love like political style concepts in the game where it's just like, yo, we're gonna be able to do all this maneuvering and whatever, but I hate how horribly inefficient this card feels. This feels just like randomly grabbing the table and just shaking it like somebody's playing Jenga and I'm gonna shake the table randomly. It's like, bro, that's not even part of the game. That's what it starts to feel like. I do not enjoy this. I find it horribly inefficient. You're always going to lose your best creatures and possibly other creatures. You've got to try and play all kinds of dumb mind games to make this terrible card slightly better. Even under the best case scenario, I cannot picture you doing well with this card, right? Like, maybe if you play with no creatures or something, like, why would you want to use this? The artwork and concept is awesome, though. Like, look at the flavor text. It says, Baal's mortal children carried within them a darkness that left unchecked would devour them all. There's literally like a god's dark essence or a demon's dark essence, demonic, whatever it is, deep inside, because I'm forgetting which one Baal is right now. Is he a demon? Is he a devil? Is he a god? There's so many supernatural beings in D&D that I get them twisted up sometimes. But anyways, you've got this otherworldly nature in these mortal beings that will literally undo them. It's a calling to the void that unmakes them. That's crazy. And the idea behind this is supposed to be all the randomly chosen creatures have this seed of Baal within them that unmake them. I just feel like the artwork, the concept, the name are so awesome that they're wasted on this card. This genuinely does feel like the absolute worst card that I have seen in Baldur's Gate. Look at the artwork, though. This guy is he's being pulled into the void by a part of his own essence, and he's reaching his hand out, and you can see it's not just the void that's pulling him in. He's being unmade at the same time. Look at his hand. You can see a line running across the palm of his hand where his hand is coming undone. You can see the same thing in his fingers. It's almost like ghostly something is just snipping away at his flesh, but there's no blood or anything else there because whatever else was underneath is being unmade at the same time. Look at the way his face is almost melting and being pulled into candle wax and turning into the purple essence that's flowing up into a swirling void. And you can see wherever he was when this process started. I don't know what it is that he's gripping there. Is it like some plant, some wheat there? Imagine the futility of that. This void opens up. It's basically like a demonic void opens up and it starts pulling you in and you're trying to survive as you're being unmade, as your face is being liquefied and turned into this purple flowing abyss. You're sitting there just grabbing anything you can. You'll grab the tiniest little plant that just breaks in your finger and gets dragged along. It totally looks like it might be flowers or something. That's so intense. Just grab something fragile to try and save your existence. It's futile, but you do it anyways. Like, do you see why the concept of this card, aside from the actual ability, is so incredible? And it just, in another way, this makes this another best and worst. The artwork and concept's the best. The card itself, though, is the absolute worst, right? There'll be some people who love it, but it ain't me. Anyways, that wraps up today's spoilers. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm very glad that you guys choose to spend time with me. Thank you to all of my patrons. And I will see you, my friends, for the next video or in tonight's live stream. Have a good one.